All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 7 of the Healthcare Growth Cycle podcast. And today we're joined by Tony Stearns, the CEO of IRX Reminder out of Akron and Cleveland area, Ohio. So another Ohio healthcare technology leader on the show. That's been what we're aiming for. So Tony, really happy to have you on to share your journey in the health tech space, and looking forward to all that we get to discuss today.
Okay, I hope we achieve an interesting conversation.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you want to just start by giving a little background into your career, like maybe even all the way back to your academic studies, and then ultimately how that fed into founding IRX Reminder, I think that'd be a useful journey to take the listeners through.
Sure, I was originally trained at the University of Michigan as an engineer, and I worked for the Navy repairing nuclear submarines and aircraft carriers for a few years. Um, the Cold War ended, and the shipbuilding industry kind of disappeared during that decade. But I was very fascinated by sort of large scale difficult problems, which shipbuilding represents. And healthcare is really an immediate similar problem, right? You're doing real things, not very often, highly specialized, large groups of highly specialized people coming together to tackle this enormous problem. One is like to get, something that can travel 50 miles an hour on top of the water. And deliver missiles. The other is, the exact opposite, to save people's lives. And I think that was, so I appreciate the challenge. I appreciate that they're both hugely expensive. It turns out they're both about something like a fifth of the entire nation's budget. I used to joke that I used to do ship repair and overhaul. So I did old ships, and now I do old people. So
No.
that's my joke. But it's that in terms of the logistics of it all, it's very, very similar, and difficult, hugely difficult to change. Right, the stakes are really high. What do we do to repair this reactor? What do we do differently to repair this machine that is that must every minute be saving people's lives? How do we change the trajectory? So
Yeah. So you've
yeah.
kind of paralleled, you've taken the lessons from working on shipbuilding. And I think I read
Oh,
in
I,
your
I didn't.
LinkedIn
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
submarines as well, was it? Naval submarines?
Yeah, right. I worked on submarines. That was my thing. I was a big Jacques Cousteau guy, so I kind of got into ships and submarines early, and I just
Wow.
got very lucky. I was able to do that. So what I learned from all that was that there's a real challenge to leadership and the structure and change management of organizations. And so that led me to study industrial organizational psychology, which is the kind of psychology that encompasses communication, leadership, training, change management, all of that. So it turned out that I trained to observe and understand work itself. And so I just happened to focus in the area of gerontology. And so along the way, my father is a PhD in lifespan developmental psychology, specializing the later life spectrum, so in gerontology. And my mother was a sociologist, a PhD sociologist, and she happened to go to work for Mattel and Rubbermaid in her early career. So when I came back to grad school and started working, we formed consulting firm together and started doing product development, mostly focused in silver industries at that time. And so I learned sort of all of my product development ethnography and qualitative research methodology from that. And then industrial organizational psychology really gives you that quantitative background. So that's sort of what we would come to call big data now, or something like that.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
what became EMRs are those databases, those data lakes that we build today, um, that require all of that. So another strange connection to shipbuilding is that uh, statistical process control created by Deming during World War II, well, really prior to World War II, making radios in Pittsburgh for Westinghouse, and then later making Liberty ships for the war effort, um, was the first place that that went from learning to taking riveting and learning to weld and being able to take a Liberty ship out of dry dock one a week, which was rather than one a year. That's the power of it, but it's all about measuring variance. And so I always came into healthcare with this sort of understanding that it's all about the variance, right? It's about narrowing the precision of your work. Um, and this is very different from healthcare because doctors, for example, are all about crossing a threshold, right? So if you have a systolic blood pressure of 139, you're healthy. And if you have a 140, you're hypertensive, right? So you no medicine at 139, and but you might that might be very different for you during the entire day. So it's really, what is your blood pressure across time, was always my understanding. And so that, like, just that insight is something that's really hard for healthcare people, even engineers have an understanding of it if they're in manufacturing, but they don't. Well, but computer programmers don't know a lot about variance, right? It either works or
No.
it doesn't, right? So
Yeah.
this is a so there are all those insights that sort of are unique to my perspective, and is something that I think I contributed early on, that helped me to understand um, uh, even medication taking, right? So the
Well, I was
time of
just
day
gonna
that you yeah. Well,
what
go
was your
ahead, ask your
branch into
question.
excuse me, yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, out of all of those experiences, how did that branch into then medication and prescription adherence? And how did you kind of arrive on that problem that you're currently solving with IRX Reminder?
Well, two different questions. Let me start
Sure.
with how I arrived here.
Sure.
So, as part of our work at Creative Action with Dr. Ronnie Stearns, um, we we were really focused on uh, different products and service development, and so we began to work in the area of dementia and in interventions for people with dementia to help keep them in their homes longer. And one of the things what was clear was that people couldn't handle managing their medications. So they would often, with dementia, take too much, right? They'd get ahead in that 7-day pill box they take, and they would overdose on some kind of blood thinner or something like that, and end up where they they'd lose their independent housing, the house they'd been living in for decades, and move into some kind of supported living, so community. So so I was seeing that, and I was like, we were seeing technologies try and help people be safe, not wander, things like that. But no one was really addressing anything with medication adherence. So I thought, oh, there's an easy behavior focused problem that I could dive into. And I would see that, whenever I talk to people, oh yeah, my grandmother had that problem. And actually the 7-day pill box itself is a mistake, right? It's taking all of the information that we work really hard to get the and onto the bottle, and we
Mhm.
pull it, and we put it in a container that's completely unlabeled, and maybe you're not even taking it at the time of day you're supposed to, because there's only those 4 compartments. So you have to know everything about what to take and not. And then it leads to a lot of mistakes, especially when you have
Sure.
any kind of cognitive impairment. And you're very compelled to want to perform by not leaving any empty compartments, even though it's like you're on Friday, but there's pills sitting there from Tuesday. You feel
Yeah.
compelled to, like, clean that mistake up. Um, So
Interesting.
there's a lot of issues with it. In terms of the variance, which is your second question, when I did my first study on stroke recovery, um, we developed an app to help remind people to take their medications, and what we were seeing is that people tended to want to take those meds about um, an hour, about 18 minutes early, right? So if you were supposed to take it at 8, you tended to take it on average around 18 minutes early. And then, so if you had a text message that was coming in to remind you, which was not how we did it,
Mm,
um, then you would always be getting it after the fact most of the time. And so you're training yourself to ignore that text. That was my initial insight. So what we had to do was find a way to create a window so that you could note that you had taken your medicine, um, and you'd only get an alert if you were forgetting in this past that time,
okay.
right? So
Sure.
so that you would get, as you would go forward, you would get le- um, um, less frequent but more impactful reminders when they were needed, and not
Okay.
train yourself to ignore them when you didn't. So
Yeah.
that was the initial idea, but that became situational smart alerting that we've developed and implemented around our technology. So then eventually we decided we needed an IoT, an Internet of Things dispenser that would confirm the taking. Uh,
I read
and,
about
and
that.
this is again connects to shipbuilding again, in that Deming said that you had to build in quality. You have to do the things that are that create the quality. And so in this case, dispensing the medication creates the record, right? So the idea was in Deming that you couldn't assemble the engine if all the parts weren't there, right?
Okay.
If you
Yep.
didn't have the part, it wouldn't take the next part. That was sort of the idea. So that you build in the quality. You knew that if you put on the next part, that all the parts before it were there. Otherwise, it wouldn't fit.
Sure. Wow. Back to the did you call it smart reminders? Was that uh,
Smart alerting. We call it
smart alerts?
situational smart alerting.
So
Yeah,
were
smart.
these push notifications on the application that you built? Like a mobile
Yeah,
push notification?
yeah. So originally, we just created a window, and you get a push notification at the time. But now the technology is a little more sophisticated in that you have to uh, you know, connect a Bluetooth device paired that is able to acknowledge while the phone is away or your watch is away that you're not
Sure.
that it's taken. So we have a LED on the device, that on our dispenser. We call it the eyelid RX, but the
Okay.
where I often call them pods. So because they're, I don't know, they look like mice. And there's, I get always in the back of my mind the joke about iPods, uh, which, anyways,
iPod for
um,
taking your medication.
right, yeah, that was always
No, yeah.
the little joke. Um, but yeah, so you again, it's all connected. So then there's the cloud that then, I think the other piece is like, how do we make it easy? So the physicians don't really. So the physicians always told me, probably for a decade, yeah, I really want to know if the patient's taking the medication. But they
Mhm.
want to know it. It took a long time to understand that they want to know it in the clinical appointment where they're talking to the person. They want to know how they did, but they don't really want to know that they didn't take their med that morning, right? That they're
Why's that?
because they on any given morning, not that
Mhm.
particular. And
Sure,
that's
but
because
just
that's half their patients aren't taking their meds on any given morning. So they
okay.
would be overwhelmed with, like, what do we do about that?
What if
Right?
oh my gosh. Yeah.
So what, again, from my, how do I empower, again, from Deming, how do I empower, and maybe Drucker in this case, another management guru, how do you empower the person who can take the action, who's responsible for the action, who builds the engine, who takes the pill, to do the right thing? And that's what that cognitive prosthetic idea comes from, that we're providing help when you need it, and then not when you don't. right? So if you remember to take your meds, you're responsible to take it on your own. You take it, and if you're forgetting, you get a reminder because you're actually forgetting. And
Sure.
then if you miss, what
Interesting.
happens next? And
Yeah.
um, so after your 3 shots, because you get a late, like, "Hey, the window's closing" reminder, you end up on what we call our intelligent action list, and that's where the healthcare professional can make a you're reported to the care team, and they can then make a decision about what to do. And it might be that that medicine isn't that important, or you can miss one. Let's see what happens tomorrow kind of decision. But it might be that you have bipolar disorder, and you're very sensitive to not taking your medication, and we want to make sure that you keep your housing, and and all the people you live with are happy. So we might want to react and give you a phone call, send you a text, maybe even drop by when we wouldn't otherwise have wanted to visit in person, and have a discussion about why you didn't take your medications. And that discussion, usually people want to go on holiday, I guess is what we'd say, take a medication holiday because they're feeling good, right? Um, so often, professionals have told me is people, like, meet someone that they wanna start a relationship, and the medications are typically narrowing, in mental health, and so that narrow emotion, you're looking for the up. That's, you wanna experience it. So you get off your medicines to experience the up, but then you have the risk of the down.
Yeah.
And so, the discussion might be, well, if you took it at a different time of day, it would loosen up later. It
Sure.
might be like, "Oh, now that you're in a good place, we could maybe pick a different medicine that's a little less active." But now you're doing it intentionally. You're not just stopping your medicine. And
Sure.
not taking your medicine can also have side effects as
I
well. Yeah.
I also want to ask not only on the patient not taking your medication and side effects, but what impact does that have to the health system if patients are consistently not taking their medication?
Well, so the way I think of it is a little different. So there are lots of reasons to take your medicine, and there are reasons to stop taking it. And so if you're experiencing adverse effects, um, we want to know that. But if we're not used to talking to our doctor, there's no way to talk to our doctor on a day to day basis. No one's checking back to go, hey, you stopped taking your medicine. Why? So that's one. And the other is that you might not know what's working. Um, so you just sort of like, I don't feel any different. This is the problem with hypertension medication. So most people don't feel any different. And about 10% of people feel some kind of side effect worse. So um, and then we don't really have a feedback system, right? Again, you talk to your physician when you're in front of them, and you don't when you're not. So
Right.
that's changed a little bit with kind of males in my chart now, but
Sure.
but that's not insufficient for this, especially when you have to tune the medications. The other reason I think that's, it's those side effects that you want to
Yeah.
be seeing. And then
Well,
sometimes the medicine, even though you're taking it, doesn't work. Like for arrhythm medicines to control your heart only work about 60% of the time. So if you take them for religiously for the 6 weeks you're supposed to, and you're still having arrhythmias, well, you need a cardioablation, or a cardioversion maybe, and then an ablation.
yeah.
And, so that's why now you either have justified that you really need that $21,000 surgery, or we determine, or we may different arrhythmia medication for a while, right? Because that one's not working. So, uh, so these are the kind of things that we don't get the feedback on.
Okay.
And clinical trials would be maybe another case where we want to see that the medicine's working. We want to know that everybody took it like they're supposed to. Maybe it's this versus the standard drug plus an extra molecule
Yeah.
that's supposed to make additional difference. That
I'm
kind of
just trying
thing.
to tie it into yeah, no, it's great. This is really, really great in-depth context. I'm just trying to think about from a just naturally, right? Like I'm a data consultant, so I go to this. But as far as the actual health system and the economics at play, does IRX Reminder help maybe eliminate the overprescribing of medication to patients? Does it help save money for pharmacists prescribing drugs to different patients? I guess just in that realm, is there any connection there, or am I way off
Yeah,
base?
yeah, no, you're totally correct. Uh, we're trying to prove now that we can save up to that we can add up to 70% more revenue. Right. So part of that is keeping the patient engaged so that the 25% of people who disengage, stop taking those meds, can be stopped, can be talked to, have a conversation quickly and
Okay.
stay engaged. Right. So when they show up for their appointments, you make that they're expecting. Um, when you look at the at the patient disengagement on revenue for behavioral health organizations, they're losing about a third of their revenue between the turnover from the frustration of people not showing up and going into crisis.
Yeah.
So, like a typical agency might expect to make about 21 million with 4,000 patients. They only make about 14. So they're always short on cash and everyone's frustrated, right? Now there's enough backlog of people who want to come into who want it that they help that they have plenty of people to replace them. So
Yeah.
they don't think there's a problem sometimes, but there is because they're losing that 7 million. With our technology, the engagement, and then the ability to go in and charge for that extra visit. Now that you know that there's a problem, that drives an extra 10 million in revenue in that group. So now you're making 23 million instead of 14. And so that's that
Sure.
70% change. And that's
Wow.
how we impact the economics. So that gives what I say is that gives more dollars to do more good.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
now we can pay our people more so they're less frustrated and stay. You're helping the people right when they need it, not pulling them out of crisis. So that's got to improve your job satisfaction and help lower turnover.
Yeah.
So turnover is about 40% in behavioral health. So if we could turn that into
Wow.
10%, for example,
Yeah.
that would be a big win.
Wow.
And now we can help more
Incredible.
people. You can add to the capacity of each person. You can see who's really good at it and learn from those people who are good, help bring up the people who aren't performing as well. So again, when you start looking at the variance within care teams, and you can learn the differences and figure out what they're doing, um, what's hard and
Wow.
what's easy, right? Uh, Anxiety and depression. There's a lot more choices uh, and faster therapies now. Like for example, craniomagnetic stimulation is a faster way, but you still want to see that that person is doing well. So you still want to know that they're taking that they're well every day. So even if you're not taking medicine, uh, check in weekly with one of our apps that looks at
Sure.
the how your level of depression, your level of anxiety, so that you
Yeah.
can get that feedback.
Yeah. So just to go more specifically to the product
And
and the
that's the last
company.
piece of
So
our product, by the way. The last piece of our product is the ability to measure the effectiveness of that medication
awesome.
uh, through visual AI. So
Okay.
that's the
It's
sort of fourth component. So we have our
perfect segue.
situational smart alerting, the Internet of Things dispenser that's confirming taking and providing the 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 dosing window. Um, the cloud that does the intelligent action list, and then the visual AI to see that the medicine's being effective with a check-in, say monthly or weekly, depending on the condition that you have.
Sure. No, yeah, that's great. From like a just a founding story, what has leading your team been like in founding RX Reminder? Like, what has that journey been like? Where did you find your engineers? Like, how has it been leading your engineers to build your platform? I would love to dive into that a little bit more on the business side.
Yeah, so people have come in and out of the company is what I would say. Uh, yeah, we're even now only just approaching generating revenue. We're right at contract manufacturing. So we're raising to do that now, and we've typically funded ourselves through SBIR uh, grants.
Okay.
So the fact that that program is not renewed at the moment is very problematic for the usual way I fund, and we're kind of at a point and a time period where the uncertainties of healthcare have made it challenging
Sure.
to raise. But I have a great team, and people have, like I said, they've worked for me for a period of time. I've gone off and tried to do the next piece of research or build, raise the next sort of funds, and then they'll come back in and act on that for a while. So, 2 of those people, uh, I probably mentioned 3 of those people. One is Dr. Fred Ma, an MD, PhD neurologist, former brain surgeon, but more importantly, 25 or maybe 30 years of executive experience in Merck and Johnson and Johnson, and in regulatory work. So he just has been uh, a mentor and a supporter of what we've done, and has basically just liked the idea, and was happened to live in Cleveland, and it turned out when I moved to Solon, he lived around the corner just by coincidence.
Wow.
Um, so he's become a friend as well as a mentor over that time. Larry Tusick is another person on our team. He became involved with work at my mother's company, so I've known him a long time. And he also liked the idea and has been teaching me how to do sales and close deals for almost 20 years in total. But he's been so we have these really long-term relationships. Our
Yeah.
first CTO, Josh Smith, mm, uh, went on to work for Watson and then Apple. And while he was at Watson, he was still working with us. But eventually, when he worked at Apple, he had to close off.
Okay.
But all of his work is still embedded in what we're doing. Um, we have relied on uh, contract engineering, but we
Okay.
have consistently used the same group of people.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
another great Akron company, software, Sanctuary Software.
Okay.
So, um, Stacy Simonton and Joe Sarkoskis have been like our lead engineering team for a long time, and so there's been that consistent group working on our apps and our firmware, and and I know and then the greatest mechanical engineer I've ever worked with is uh, John Cicello, who's another great Ohio company based in Worcester, Parallel Design. If you've, taken your Purell out of any dispenser in any bathroom or hallway, John designed uh, all of that. If you've used a diaper genie as a parent, uh, or almost any ironing board sold, not built, designed by an American company and built in China, almost likely. Uh, he's done those. So he's just touched all your
Wow.
hoses, everything, and then finally Quentin Fisher um, at Aiden Health, has been one of our AI partners, and then the other AI partner is Videra Health, um, and so they're based in Utah. Them through an accelerator uh, years ago, the Village Capital Accelerator, really our first national accelerator, and they've helped, and we have a 10-year relationship, and in fact we just had a big breakthrough in the past year when we published our studies on the ability to assess through a smartphone whether you have tardive dyskinesia or not. So that's a side effect of taking antipsychotic medications. It's a movement disorder, often permanent. You see the Ingrezza and the Spravato TV commercials now. Like, what is tardive dyskinesia?
Wow.
But we've our work is involved in their research now as well. So and that is a big breakthrough in addition to
Great
the
team.
ability to
Yeah.
see that. So but I've kept the same collaborators. They're independent. so they can make a living when we're out of the money, which we
Sure.
occasionally are. Um, but they will profit when we move forward. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the most rewarding part about leading your health tech company's team?
Uh, it's really the pride that all these super smart, wonderful people pay any attention to my ideas. I guess it's just I, I I mean I I guess I get a big kick out of turning in the grant because the idea is complete. Um, and that's only beat by when we cross a milestone and we've done something when the statistics show. Uh, we work with a partner, Cherick Health and Wellness, also based here in Cleveland, Dr. Uh, Ranjan. Um, and he's a psychiatrist, and he let us in, talked to his patients, and then of course my chief medical officer Owen Muir has been uh, someone who's supported us, and he's a genius in his own right and a big influencer with his own successful podcasts and newsletters, um, and TikTok feeds that number in the millions. It's really nice that the Dr. Ma, Winry, Owen, and William, who also is our chief strategy officer, all spend time on this idea. So it's just I'm just honored to work with them and that they saw this vision as important and joined up.
Yeah. It's amazing. What would you say is one of the most challenging pieces of operating a health tech company in healthcare?
Well, you know, uh, not enough co-opetition, I guess, is what I would say. It's really, it's really. I think when you have a surgical device that has a clear market and someone wants that surgery, and you're a doctor and you have a hospital system you're within, there's clearer incentives. When you have a diagnostic that 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 maybe take you used to send out for a lab and now you can do it in person, or uh, oh, office lab, that has an incremental uh, value that's very clear to healthcare. When you're doing things that help the patient directly, in this case taking the medicines,
Yeah.
it's a much bigger lift. We cross technologies, right? We're not just software, we're software and hardware.
Yeah.
So so we we're outside of the system. We weren't clearly reimbursed for a decade. Um, all these things, all of those challenges piled up on top of each other. Um, we were always convincing people that telemedicine would make a difference, that even medication adherence was an issue, right? Like, I mean, people know it's an issue, but they don't care, I guess. In the end,
Yeah.
it doesn't change
Is
their activity. It
is
doesn't
med
change their reimbursement. It's
Yeah,
just
okay.
that person doesn't do as well, and that's sort of their choice,
And that's
right?
it.
Kinda like
So it's not
smoking.
even in the value-based care picture at all? Is
It is, because
It
it's the
is.
most important thing we can do to make
Okay.
sure, but no one wants to, because it crosses disciplines, because it's an in they think there's a simple engineering solution. They think it's an alert, right? They don't understand the that it's a complicated behavior that's variable, uh, that
Yeah.
that's dynamic from day to day, that you
Yeah.
need to see if it's still working, if it works. I mean, even people change sensitivity for medications over time. People
Sure.
get I mean, if you use a bad drug as an example, right? Um, you need more and more of a drug over time. You get used to it, and so to get the same high, you need more drug,
Sure.
right? So you're used to some of these medications, and so you need to change the dosage, or it gets more sensitive to the medications. Um, and then some drugs don't work very well. SSRIs are only good for about so they do two bad things. One is they only work about 50% of the time, and when they are working, quote unquote, they only make you feel they don't let you feel good
Okay.
necessarily. So
Yeah.
So the idea is that that's not a solution. That's that's an addiction of sorts, would be the argument.
Sure.
Now we want people to not, to be neutrals better than being, uh, suicidal or depressed. That I no doubt about that. So, but if we have rapid ways, if we can give them a day long session or give them an esketamine treatment along with continued therapy, all those things are gonna, are gonna bring you higher. They're gonna open up that that happiness potential,
Sure.
and that's the difference I think here.
Wow.
So we want to. It's the difference between being, managing your sickness and health.
Sure.
And so ultimately, I feel like that's the business we're in, is we're helping people remain independent. We're helping them when they need it. We're leaving them alone when they're not, and we're giving this
When they're not
critical
needing it.
variance information so we know the drug is working and that the care team can do something about it.
That's great. Yeah. Now, just in the topic of AI, and it's one of the questions that I always ask, but can you go into more of the visual AI component of your product, and how that's impacting medication adherence?
Well, so we're just again, this is the product that we're bringing to market. So
Sure.
uh, the I can talk about how I'd like it to be an influence.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah. Whatever you.
so So that what we can say is that people who take antipsychotics are at risk of tardive dyskinesia, for example. So they might go off that medication, uh, the antipsychotics, to gain that emotional range. So um, that could lead to a brief period of okayness, and then the opportunity maybe lose their housing, lose their work, um, uh, that sort of thing. So there's a potential for crisis. So uh, one of let, one of those things that might go wrong is you have a relatively low risk on a yearly basis, 3 to 4% for tardive dyskinesia. Your lifetime risk is 30, maybe even as high as 40%. Um, Uh, and because it's not very well diagnosed, because nobody's trained to spot tardive dyskinesia until it's very, very obvious that the kind of subtle things. Um, the idea is that if you could see that you had it early, you could stop the medication, you could lower the amount you're taking. There's a problem with that. This is hard to under, but
Okay.
movement disorder specialists tell us that you get tardive dyskinesia from the antipsychotic, but the antipsychotic also masks it. So it both causes it and then it controls it. And then it stops being able to control it as your body gets more resistant to the antipsychotic medication. And we
Wow.
don't quite understand the chemistry, but if you suddenly stop taking your medication, you may see tardive dyskinesia. And it may go away and it may not. And there's also medication now to control it. So the important thing to know is that you should avoid taking antipsychotics if there are other choices. So it shouldn't be used as a behavioral control mechanism. It should be used because that's what you need because you have that kind of disorder.
Okay.
So we don't want to use antipsychotics for depression, for example,
Okay.
which they sometimes are. Um, so uh, knowing that you're checking for tardive dyskinesia as a standard when you're taking antipsychotics then makes you more reluctant to give those antipsychotics when they're not necessary.
Sure.
And then we can do something about it if they're causing this side effect. So that's a place to
Okay.
do research now. What if we spot it really early? What if we stop? Is it less likely to occur permanently? We don't have that answer yet. That's something to be studied.
Okay.
Um, uh, Again, with cardiac work, um, I think we can, or dementia, for example. Um, Back to my original inspiration, something I'd like to do eventually is help to prove that people can stay in their homes, say 2 years longer, because they're able to take their medications because they've trained themselves and they have this backup, um, and an augmented environment. with your watch reminder or even lighting reminders that help you to make sure that you're taking your meds correctly. And in our system, you can't get ahead, unlike the and other systems are out there that make it harder to take too much medication.
Sure.
But but it also um, it, it it has a downside for most other medications in that you give control over to the temple of pills, I call it. And so you have to it says you have to come take your pills now, and it creates a sort of negative relationship where that robot is in charge of you rather than you're making the healthy decision to go and pick up the medication and put it in your hand, which is
Hmm.
which is a little different. It's like
Yeah.
psychologically it's just a little twist.
Just
It's different because you never get it never says you have medicine to take. It says you have something to do with IRX Reminder. It might be a survey, it might be for this, and it's where you always get your reminders already, right? So it's not it comes from the environment that in the ways you're used to getting those messages. So you don't form that relationship with that device telling you what to do. Nobody
right.
likes that.
No, no one wants to be told what to do, especially with their own health. Yeah. Well, that's great. Tony, I just want to give you the floor. We're at about time now. Where would be a good place for people to connect with you or our IRX Reminder if they want to?
Yes. Our website is irxreminder.com, and I'm A Stearns at irxreminder.com. And you can find us there. Uh, and on LinkedIn, I guess we have both a company site, and you can reach out to me. I'm always happy to connect with people. Where, like I said, I believe in co-opetition. We can't beat healthcare on our own. It requires every champion and all of the technologies to come together, interoperating with their own unique contributions. And so, and I'm happy to give advice. Um, and try and pay it forward, pay it back for all the help I've received. I'm an
Appreciate
educator
it.
as well, so I'm there, and so, yeah. So please
Awesome.
reach out
Yeah.
and uh, let me play a role if I can play a role.
Oh, thanks so much for that. And ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 7 of the Healthcare Growth Cycle podcast featuring Tony Stearns, CEO of IRX Reminder. We will see you on the next episode. Thanks so much.
Yep. Thank you.